This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Insider Insights. I'm Laura Watkins, Director of Media and Marketing here at 11FS. On a recent episode of Fintech Insider, we sat down with a panel of product experts to explore how to build and launch a product. But launching is only half the battle. How do you drive awareness and bring customers into your ecosystem? And once they're in, how do you keep them engaged? In this episode, we're breaking down the fintech marketing playbook, what's working, what's not, and what banks can learn from the challenges reshaping the industry. And here's the twist. As fintechs scale, navigate regulation, and expand their offerings, they might just have something to learn from the banks too. So, with that in mind, let's introduce our guests. First up, it's a warm welcome to Bryan McCarty, Head of Product and Product Marketing at Aurum.io. Great to have you on the show, Bryan. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do at Aurum?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. My background is really a mix of leading marketing teams and product teams. I originally joined Aurum to lead marketing, and then in December of this past year, I transitioned over to start leading our product team. What we're best known for at Aurum is really we make money move. Behind the scenes, that means we're transforming payment technology for businesses. And we do that by revolutionizing three things: payment speed, payment certainty, and payment orchestration. We have a couple of API-based solutions that help us do that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You're sort of wearing two hats, which is perfect for today's conversation. Next up, we have Jack Cully, Head of Brand and Product Marketing at Plum. Thank you so much for joining us on Fintech Insider. Again, please tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your role at Plum.
Hello. Yeah, great to be here. I'm Jack. I lead our brand, creative and product marketing team at Plum. Plum is a smart money app that is on a mission to help our customers grow their money for all of life's different things, both in the long and short term. We kind of believe in the power of starting small through AI and automation. We think just a few pounds regularly saved can make all the difference, and Plum does that for you automatically, so you can start building for all of life's things. Our teams help Plum articulate its mission, its positioning, and our kind of unique point of view on the world. And we also look at how we connect our customers' wants and needs to the thing we're building as well. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, you're very welcome. And last but not least, it's equally a warm welcome to Louis Debatte, VP of Product Marketing at Adyen. How are you today, Louis? Can you equally tell us a little bit about your role at Adyen?
Yeah, thank you. And glad to be here. So indeed, I'm leading product marketing at Adyen. We're a global fintech platforms. We help large businesses around the world with payments, embedded finance, and more. I've been in product marketing for about 10 years, mostly in fintech. I'm actually an ex-banker too, so I come from traditional banking. So I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion.
Amazing. You can talk to both sides today. So let's dive straight in. As marketers, when do you guys first get involved with the product roadmap? How do you collaborate with product teams to ensure kind of alignment between product and marketing from the get-go? Maybe if I start with you, Louis, how do you approach that?
I don't know if it's a good idea to start with me because I actually don't. And
okay, interesting. Tell us more.
I'll tell you more of a career story. So a few years ago, I attended a keynote by Marty Kagan. I don't know if you read his books about product management. It's called Inspired, How to Build Tech Products That People Love. And back then I was a product marketing manager and I was getting involved in the roadmap, working with PMs, telling them what to build. And then of course, butting heads with product managers along the way, right? And I was lucky to attend a keynote by Marty Kagan where he explained that the product manager is the CEO of the product and that it's their responsibility to build the product for a business outcome and not for a technical product. And and that the product marketing's role is to actually bring that product to market, but we have to trust the product manager in building the right products. And that kind of changed my career personally, because then I stopped trying to influence the roadmap, and I started figuring out how to better bring the product to market. And since then, my position has been that I have to trust the product managers and the engineers that they're building the right products. Of course, if I can help with input, I will. But yeah, now that's how I do it. At the end, we've got great engineering teams, so I just trust them that they're building the right thing, and I focus my energy on positioning it.
I love that. I think, the product manager as the CEO of the product is a really interesting perspective. Jack, you were doing a lot of nodding during that. What's your approach? Is it similar? Is it different?
Well, I was originally shocked at the at what you said there, Louis, but actually what you're saying makes a lot of sense and is very similar to how we approach it. So we do get involved kind of as early as possible, but it's not in terms of, I guess we are helping shape the proposition and talk through how we might talk about it in our marketing and positioning and messaging initiatives. Look, I think there's two ways that I look at this actually, because there's a lot of things happen in the product org where product managers are doing lots of research on their own. They're doing a lot of kind of tech scoping on their own. And I think there's kind of two ways that we look at this at Plum. The first is having formal rituals and processes to kind of make in the loopness happen. We do this through planning syncs. We have brainstorms and kickoffs from time to time. We have a regular go-to-market meeting where we talk about things that are live in production. And I think those things are important. But actually, I think the most important thing is having very close relationships with the individuals that work in product, so that you're making space for casual conversation. And in that casual conversation, actually, I think most product marketing work happens. It's where you're having maybe your regular one-to-one where you're grabbing a coffee and talking about a particular problem. And in those kind of conversations, you have both soft alignment on the direction of the product. You help a product manager articulate their vision in a way that customers will understand. But you also sometimes come to hard decisions on what does or doesn't make it onto the product based upon your point of view on what the market wants. So yeah, I guess aligned to you, Louis, but your initial pronouncement that you don't get involved at all shocked me greatly. But no, I'm with you.
You come back round. We're all on an even keel again. Bryan, obviously you kind of are the product manager and the product marketing manager. So how are you kind of, in a way, keeping yourself in the loop? How does it work for you?
Yeah, at Orm, it's very collaborative. I will say our product org is definitely leading the charge with what Louis and Jack said, with setting that direction, what they're building. But that collaboration for us really starts with the roadmap. We do quarterly roadmap planning. And I would say that gives our marketing org its first signal of what's coming on the roadmap. From there, then we are starting to kind of shape and size what these releases look like. They're plotted on the roadmap, but to our marketing org, it's like, okay, is that thing a big deal or just like a tiny thing you all are shipping, right? So we have a very simple framework, P1, P2, P3, as far as like a product launch, right? P1 is everything on the smorgasbord you can imagine. It's a big deal, brand new product. You're doing paid ads, press release, all the things you can imagine you're doing from a marketing standpoint, right? P3 is on the opposite spectrum. It's maybe a quality of life thing that's going out. Maybe it's an email to current customers, an in-app message, and something on the change log on the API docs. And like, that's it. But that framing helps us stay better aligned on the product side and marketing side to like, how big of a deal is this release? It keeps us all true to it. It's like, yeah, this is a big deal versus like, no, this is just kind of quality life. We just need to let customers know. And I think that helps both sides kind of stay true and kind of informed of what we're building and kind of refrain from shouting about everything. I think we probably all use tools and software where every week they're doing an announcement and it's the same playbook. You see something on LinkedIn, you see a blog post, and it's like every week they're just shouting at you. And, after a while, I think folks tend to just start tuning that stuff out if you treat all releases the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
I fully agree with this prioritization matrix. I think we've been using it. And since then, I think one of the positive outcomes as well is it allows you to focus all your marketing efforts on those P1s and to do a much better job at them rather than trying to position and market every little feature, and then you've got too much, so you can't really make an impact. So
yeah, absolutely. You just won't make a big splash if you're kind of drip feeding every little thing that happens. People will kind of lose their attention or their kind of patience with the brand. Okay, so hypothetically, let's say we've got our product, it's in beta. How would you go about marketing that? What would be the first step to kind of getting a product out in the world? Examples of how to do it, perhaps sort of the Revolut, the Monzo approach of maybe early access, exclusivity, and kind of building from there. Is that like the kind of common way to do it in the playbook? Is there a better way? Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, before I was at Plum, I was at Monzo for a long time, and honestly, the best success we saw with launching betas was via community. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our kind of community, in the earlier days, it was via events. As we started to scale as a business, it became more online via the community forum. We would basically always try our best to give our community that forum early access to anything, whether it be marketing campaigns. We'd even share early versions of marketing campaigns and ask for their feedback there. And what you're getting both you're learning about how to take it to market for a wider launch. You're learning about how to message, you're learning about the kinds of things that customers do and don't respond to, but you're also getting early advocacy and adoption. And it was an amazing thing to do, but we had to put a lot of effort into curating that community and giving them a place to feel at home and want to talk about random things as well as Monzo. So that's something that we really loved back then. At Plum, it's slightly different. We don't have an online forum, but we do have a big pool of customers who love us, and we talk to very frequently. And we do this via CRM instead, right? So we are engaging with a community of people that we know will be engaged to start with and early. We give them a wait list. They can come and join that wait list, and then we do comms based on whether they've joined that wait list and help hone a proposition. But for me, beta testing is to make sure that the product works as expected and to gain early access to insights that on how to position to the wider market when we go out bigger. So that's how I've seen it work well in the past.
Bryan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And one note kind of on the product side of the house, I think a beta launch makes a lot of sense. You get that feedback loop. You're working out little kinks, even from pricing and messaging and marketing side, all that stuff. One note for product managers and the product org is to, I love this notion of, our work's not done until we tell the world about it. Right. So even during that beta, it's like you really haven't told the world about it. It's to a small subset. It's easy for product managers to build something, ship it, and then we're on to the next thing. We're excited about the new thing we're building. So during this beta period, it's very important on the product side to realize we're in beta, there's going to be kinks. We got to we can move on to the other thing we're building, but we also got to stay in touch with what's happening with beta so we can fix things up before that big launch. And again, that big launch goes back to the P1, P2, P3, but there's that motion of okay, our work as the product org, we're not done until we actually tell the world about this thing we built. And of course, that comes in different sizes and shapes. But I think that that through line from product to marketing in that beta period is crucial to make sure when the big launch does happen, everything's connected.
Yeah. And speaking of the kind of big launch, as it were, Louis, what do you find as sort of the most effective channels and tactics for this? Obviously, word of mouth is good at the very beginning for a brand, but how do you scale that over time? What are the best tactics to kind of get that launch off the ground?
So first, to come back on the beta thing, I completely agree with what was said. I think sometimes the best way to market a product is sometimes not to market it and to do that closed pilot where you can really test, iterate. And I think from a marketing point of view, it's super important because in doing this pilot, you're getting customers to test it, to have an impact with it. And you can use those happy customers when you do the actual official launch to say, here it is, it works, it has impact. Just listen to the people that were in the beta. And I think that's also linked to the topic of trust. When you launch a product, you want people to trust that the product works, right? Tying that back to your questions about referrals and word of mouth, it's again the theme of trust, right? We're in fintech. we deal with money, and where there's money, there's fraud, there's scams, right? And so trusting a fintech, whether that's B2B or B2C or in your bank with your money, is not a light decision. And so the main driver of the product adoption is trust. And that's why I feel in our space, referrals and word of mouth works so much. It's because if that product is recommended by someone that I know and trust, I'm more likely to give it a try, right? And so I always start there. And I think a recent examples I saw in our world is Trade Republic, right? I read a couple of months back that they went from 4 million to 8 million users in a year, right? Have we seen large-scale ad campaigns from Trade Republic? No. I think they have a good product and they have a very active referral program. And that actually scaling from 4 million to 8 million just through referrals, that actually works well in terms of scale, right? So I'd start there.
I
right?
know, absolutely. And that's sort of to your point, Jack, around like kind of creating a community, which in turn becomes brand advocates for your product, for your brand in general. Kind of building that community around the product. Is community and community building just such an important part of that like trust piece, as Louis was talking about? Like, financial services kind of has not necessarily a trust problem, but it has a lot riding on whether or not people do trust you with their money. So it's kind of building community around the brand, not just a nice to have anymore. It's kind of necessary.
Yeah, I think it's so important. But how do you do that? I think you do it with lots of kind of direct and indirect signals. Vuoko, who's the chief design officer at Monzo, always used to say that we should put in so much care to our product because customers feel it. I think it's like, but it's very much the Steve Jobs thing too, right? Where like the original Mac, they designed beautifully on the inside to make it look beautiful on the outside as well, because customers can just tell if you've put like lots of thought and attention into how you build it, how you design it, how you message it. And so there's lots of tiny little cues that I think you can build in from a product design point of view, from a brand design point of view, that really kind of give subtle directions that this is a place you can trust and this is a legitimate platform. And, certainly at Monzo, and we're thinking about this at Plum too, that forms a lot of what we think about kind of driving trust is just basically, does the thing feel good in the hand? And if it feels good in the hand and has something novel and has something that people want to talk about, then that takes you halfway there in terms of it doesn't sound like a tactic, right? But it really is. Like, ship something good and customers will talk about it. That is as simple as it should be, but we tie ourselves in knots so many times by thinking about all these other different incremental channels that might work for us. But the real thing that works is building something that people love, people want to talk about, and people are happy to tell their friends about. And that's always, for me, has been the best kind of marketing channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's got to work, right? Otherwise, people aren't going to stick around, and worse still, they're going to leave you bad reviews and everyone else is going to know as well. Yeah. So, obviously, it sounds obvious, of course, but the first and foremost thing is that the product has to be good, which, no pressure, product managers. But Bryan, coming to you, obviously, we were talking about sort of brand building and brand advocacy. There's a stat here, 69% of consumers are now recognizing fintech brands, but 59% are aware of traditional financial institutions. So what is it, do you think, that makes those fintech brands so much more recognizable? Is it, some of this kind of brand advocacy rather than kind of maybe a bland advertising campaign that doesn't tell you anything about the product? What do you think?
Yeah, one thing that's worked really well for us at Orm is, and it's really, it's going to sound very marketing, but it's really meant for the whole business, and that is just having a master brand framework. So that's if you're a marketer, you understand this. It's your typical messaging house and your talking point, your description, and your key pillars and all that. But we actually talk about it a lot across the whole company. So even on the product side as well, it keeps us true to what we're building. So a quick example, Orm, we have a Deliver API. It's a direct connection to the Federal Reserve here in the US. It's one API to connect you to all major banking rails, RTP, FedNow, same day ACH, wires, and now Visa Direct. And so that all makes sense. You're using that as a messaging point on the marketing side. But under that, we talk about we're the simplest API for fast, reliable payments. On the product side, when we're building something, I wouldn't put it past a product manager or an engineer when we're building something to call out on one of our stand-ups, when we're reviewing a design or the API, say, that doesn't sound very simple. That sounds like a clunky API. And they're really tying that back to that master brand framework and calling it out and saying, yeah, that, if we're the simplest API for fast, reliable payments, that seems clunky. We got to do better, right? Mm-hmm. So my point is having this simple artifact internally keeps our marketing team aligned, and they're always using it, that language, right, to keep their messaging true. But we're using it on the product side as well. So it's a long way of saying, even having a simple artifact like that really keeps you true to your promise on the marketing side and product side. And I think that's what helps echo. So you're showing up consistently and you're living up to the promise no matter where you're showing up in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting everyone kind of reading from the same hymn sheet of like what your brand values are, what your tone of voice is, what it looks like. So it isn't just a marketing discipline that's added on at the end. It's like, right, pervasive through the entire kind of product set and what you're building. Jack, you're nodding.
Yeah, no, I think, Bryan, what you're saying is actually, I think, a expression of all of us have product marketing somewhere in our job titles, right? It's no coincidence that product marketing has grown as a discipline in the last 10, 15 years at the same time as fintech. And that I actually think is one of fintech's key unfair advantages against banking brands that have been around for 300 years and do things very differently, where marketing sits in one corner and product sits in the other. Product marketing is the marriage of both of them. And basically what you're doing is you're using your product surface as a marketing message and vice versa. And so that's where I think it's like, I think that's really the articulation of what you're saying, Bryan. I love it.
Hey, perhaps as an ex-traditional banker, I can provide. I think, to me, the reasons why the more modern fintechs are so successful is because a lot of the traditional banks historically, like Jack said, they've been here for 300 years and they're universal banks, right? They're trying to serve the public sector, the private sector, the SMBs, the commercial, the corporate bankers, as well as us individual consumers. And traditionally, based on my experience, the individual consumers were not the most profitable segments for banks, right? And so they were mainly, it was a very costly thing, serving consumers with ATMs and branches. And they were mainly using it as a way to attract deposits so that they could lend and make money on commercial financing. And so I think where the fintechs come in is that we can actually focus on those, very particularly on those segments, right? Rather than trying to be the universal bank or fintech, we can, in the case of Jack, just focus on savings for a specific target demographic, or just focus on money movement for a very specific subset of companies. And in doing that, and that's the core of product marketing, we can have a very tailored value proposition and a very tailored approach. And that drives usually marketing success, because we can acquire a lot of customers faster than those universal banks that are trying to serve everyone and to have a generic proposal can, basically.
Very well said. And that brings us nicely to the end of this half. So stay tuned. Up next, we'll be looking at the challenges of growing fintechs at scale, particularly as they become more mature and start encroaching on incumbent banks' territory. All coming up after this quick break. Cybersecurity is the top concern for UK businesses, according to Vanta's recent State of Trust report. But whether you're a startup founder or an experienced security professional, Vanta is here to help. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, centralize security workflows, complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Join over 9,000 global companies like Flow Health, Synthesia, and Alica Bank, who use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/insider. That's VANTA.com/insider for $1,000 off.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. In part 1, we looked at how fintech marketers know when to get involved in the product development process. And in this half, we're going to ask how fintechs can hold on to their tried and tested marketing techniques as they grow at scale and what the future of fintech marketing might look like. So taking that scale piece, first and foremost, what challenges do fintech...
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
face in maintaining their identity as they scale. Kind of just before the break, Louis, you were talking about kind of the bigger banks, the financial institutions trying to sort of be everything to everyone, and then that kind of harming some of their marketing messaging. On the flip side, obviously every company wants to grow. How do fintechs kind of maintain that identity while trying to compete at scale?
Yeah, so I think the risk of scaling, you usually, when you scale fast, you're at risk of losing two things. First, you're at risk of losing focus as you try to expand to more market segments and expand your product offering and try to become that universal bank, as we were discussing about. And you might lose your culture, and that's even more important, because that culture is usually what makes you successful in the first place. That entrepreneurial spirit that many of us in fintechs find, that culture of building fast, those things that Jack and Bryan were talking about shipping the right product, making sure we're not making things too complex. And so many companies, as they scale, they kind of lose that DNA of what made them successful in the first place. And that's why I think one of the things that I've seen by joining Adyen, which is a very culture-first company, is that by trying to protect that mentality, that founder's mentality, there's a book about that, that's one of the key ingredients for those fintechs that have been successfully scaling, is keeping that agility. Otherwise, we become, like a big bank, right?
Absolutely. And Bryan, we talked about at the very top your background with Jack Henry and Move and kind of all these companies that are and have scaled. Do you agree kind of on that the culture is the thing that you kind of really need to maintain, and then that is kind of pervasive across the actual identity of the brand as well? What's your take?
Yeah, one thing I would add is this idea of growth is absolutely important, right? Especially for fintechs trying to scale. But I'd also say there's an opportunity to be willing to play the long game. So a quick example, over in the States this week, last few days happening right now is Fintech Meetup. In the fall, there's Money 2020. So some big marquee fintech events. If you walk into those showroom floors, there's some really cool booths, but it all kind of just blends in together. It's kind of chaotic and everyone's spending lots and lots of money to have their booth in that space. Something we've done at Orem and we're becoming known for is we actually buy out a donut shop outside of the badged area and give our attendees a space to, get away from that chaos, right? And on the sales side, we absolutely have no pitching. It's really a place to come in, get a world's best coffee because we fly in the world championship baristas, get free donuts, and have a minute just to decompress. Of course, if they start talking to us about our products, we'll tell you, but it's not meant, we don't have our AEs in there opening up their laptops, giving a demo. Like that is not the space for it. So what I mean by that long game is we know we want to be remembered. If they go home next few weeks, next few months, they're going to remember, man, that was so nice that Orem put on that event with the great coffee, free donuts. And, the next time they're looking for something, hopefully they think of us. But it's that willingness to stay tight and to play that long game that I think really helps stand out in this sea of sameness and all these crazy booths that are on the showroom floor. So that's that's the approach we've taken. And it's been working really, really well.
I love that sea of sameness phrase, and equally I love the idea of like just like a place to decompress and have a donut. That would definitely get my vote. But Jack, on that kind of sea of sameness point, are we reaching a point where a lot of the brands kind of look and sound the same? We've seen the sort of breakout fintechs, Monzo obviously being one of them, kind of setting the new rules for what marketing in fintech looks like. But are we running the risk that if everyone follows the same playbook, we're kind of all doing the same things?
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think the economics of certainly consumer fintech are such that everyone's going to start encroaching on everyone's space. Like we're all trying to get the same consumer. We may have attracted them to our proposition with one thing, and then we try and start cross-selling them to another thing. And look, I think Monzo's done a very good job at this. Like I obviously love Monzo, having been there for a long time before Plum, but I use it as my main current account. I also have a credit card there. I also have some savings. Most of my savings are in Plum, of course, but some savings in
Good caveat.
Monzo. And I use a lot of the features, obviously, and they've done a great job at kind of at branching out. Now, look, I think the key thing here that will define the next great fintechs over the next 5 years will be articulating a clear vision, repeating it all the time, and being really clear on what that vision is. And that vision can't be, we are a generic fintech to help you with all of your money needs. I don't think that is the way that fintechs will win. That's why we've kind of, just to give you an example about how we're thinking about it, like our point of view, we think, is very clear. It's starting small, it's habit forming. We kind of think about ourselves more as a fitness app for your money rather than a savings app that lets you grow your money. It's more about like, how do we help you form habits and grow a lifetime of savings and investments, and we do that in a very different way. So having our challenge will be, as we launch more products, more savings products, more investment products, and maybe other things, our challenge will be, how do we make sure that unique point of view, building habits for the long run, can be applied to those products? And we're thinking very deliberately about that as we develop new things.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, and sort of goes back to what Bryan was saying around making sure everyone's kind of reading from the same hymn sheet all of the time and not diverting from that. So, flipping the script a little bit, we've been talking a lot about fintechs and their kind of playbook and so on. If the big banks want to compete, what's the sort of biggest shift they need to make? What's the sort of one thing that they need to do before they equally reach kind of critical mass where they all sort of look and sound the same? Maybe Louis, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, many. I think many banks try to imitate the fintechs. They try to look as cool, as agile. They try to move as fast. But we all know they start with a handicap, their size, their legacy tech, the way they're set up. So it's an uphill battle. And I'm a bit surprised that they try to imitate fintechs because I do believe they have strengths, right? They have a massive existing customer base that typically is loyal and doesn't switch banks easily. They have massive amounts of data on these customers, and they do have the scale and the financial means to create very good products that can be very profitable. So if I were a bank, I would definitely leverage all of that and try to have a very product-led marketing approach, offering great products to my customer base based on what I know about them. And I don't necessarily see a lot of banks doing that. I'm actually surprised that neobanks are able to offer higher saving rates, interest rates on accounts, or cashbacks on card payments. And traditional banks don't necessarily do that. So that'd be my take on this.
No, that's really interesting. It kind of goes back to your earlier point when you're talking about Trade Republic. Have they done big splash marketing campaigns? No, but it's working. Have the big banks done massive splash campaigns? Absolutely, but maybe they shouldn't. Bryan, what do you think?
Yeah, one thing I'd add on is just this idea of speed. I think a lot of fintechs, especially scaling fintechs, right, that speed to market. And that's just not on the product side. It's, I think, across the whole org. So I think, and I'd be curious, Louis, what you think, but if banks can develop more systems internally to speed things up, for internal reviews. Maybe this ad campaign doesn't have to go to 4 committees to get reviewed. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, just speeding up different areas in the org across marketing, across product, that will unlock a whole bunch of things. But I think speed is definitely something that big banks could, try to lean into a little bit more.
Jack, what's your take? Obviously, coming from a slightly more fintech background, do you see a lot of copycat behaviors? And is it right that, banks are trying to compete in this way, or should they be doing things differently, as Louis suggested?
Yeah, I think, Louis, you made a really good point. Banks have a lot of unfair advantages. They are big brands that get to use those big brands. And the biggest thing that we're always fighting against in fintech is inertia. It's not that people don't want to move their money. It's just that they just think it's too hard. And they think it's, a lot of people that I speak to, even, I speak to lots of kind of potential customers and customers at Plum. And, I say, you can save automatically. It's amazing. All you need to do is just sign up and connect your account and you're done. And even that feels too hard. And so I think banks need to be leaning into their, like incumbent banks, if I were to give them advice, lean into your unfair advantage. Like, talk a lot more about why you would stay with this trusted institution of 300 years versus move to an incumbent. And, in fairness, that is exactly the content of pretty much all incumbent bank brand advertising, especially Lloyd's. Lloyd's just put a horse running through a field and they say, look at us, we've been here for 300 years, you should trust us. But this is a bugbear of mine.
I can tell.
Longevity does not mean trustworthiness, but banks spend tens of millions of pounds a year telling you that longevity does mean trust. And so everyone kind of equates that. That is an example of them using their unfair advantage. Where they could use their unfair advantage more is CRM and engaging on their apps, which is what fintechs do very well. Fintechs are able to cross-sell because they use smart UI to help you upsell to a product in 30 seconds. If they could do that within their apps, if they could do it within their kind of CRM channels, they'd be much better off.
Mm-hmm. And I think sort of taking kind of the trust piece again a little bit. There's a lot of emotion in marketing financial products because people there's a little bit of taboo around money. People find it quite a sensitive subject. There's inertia about moving your money. Once I put it in one place, I don't want to move it again. How do you I feel like it's important that marketers remember the human at the end of the transaction, like the person that is either buying from you, putting their money in your savings account, whatever it may be. How do you kind of make sure that you kind of maintain that human touch when you're marketing to humans? Because you kind of, there's the horse running across the beach. It does say trust us, but it doesn't really say why. So how do you kind of keep that human connection in your marketing? Jack, what do you think?
Simple, but talk to them as much as you can. Just every time that you have a campaign that's going to go out, or a product that you want to launch, or even an idea that you're exploring, just have an excuse to talk to customers. And I know that is such a simple thing to say, but it's so easy to do, especially in today's world when CRM is really easy to send. You can send an email in half an hour if you really wanted to, and then you can jump on a Google Meet with a customer pretty much straight away. Just talk to them, and not only will you kind of understand how to position things, but there is a sense of when a human is talking to a human being, you then feel this sense of empathy, which I just don't think you can get anywhere else, which is why I always say talk to customers. Yes, there is a place for surveys. Yes, there's a place for market research. Yes, there's a place for scoping and all the other stuff that you would do, but just talk to customers, and that is how you maintain the empathy. Remember whenever you're having a conversation about driving acquisition and the KPI that you're hitting next month, remember every single number in that KPI chart is a human being, and you can only do that by talking to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, just remembering that the numbers in a spreadsheet all represent a person is almost the most valuable thing you can do as a marketer. Bryan, what's your thoughts? How do you kind of keep that keep an acknowledgement of that kind of emotional response that people have to kind of financial services in your marketing messaging?
Yeah, we touched on it earlier, but for me, the idea of community comes into play here. And I think over the last handful of years, coming up with a community strategy has become like a check the box. It's like, oh, we need to have a Slack channel. That's our community play.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're honest about that, I think community is important, but it's really being honest about like, well, what does community mean to Orem? What does community mean to, our business? And it's being comfortable leaning into that. In a former life, community meant having a Slack channel with thousands of fintech developers, and that was a really big play for us. In other, gigs I've been in, community was developing an educational webinar series that over time we drove hundreds of decision makers to join that, educational webinar each month. So it's this idea of community, but not just like, reactionary. We need to do what everyone else is like. Where are our people? Meeting them where they're at and figuring out where there's value in educating them, giving them a space to talk to each other without just it being a sales pitch all the time, right?
I think to add to what Jack was saying about talking to customers, I think there's also another angle to that, is that when you do talk to your customers, you understand their pains or what they're trying to achieve. And once you have that intimate knowledge, you can actually position your product not as a product with features, here, look at my product, it's amazing, buy it, but more, hey, here's a painkiller for your problem, or here's a vitamin for what you're trying to achieve. And so I completely agree with this idea of like leveraging the community, learning from them, and then positioning your product as a solution or as a painkiller or a vitamin. I think that's really how we approach product marketing with my team. Is the product is here to solve a customer pain or to help that customer achieve something, and that creates much more intimacy, that makes it much more relevant, and that creates the right type of emotions with your buyers.
I really, really like that analogy. We're sort of coming close to the end, but I think, we can't get away from the fact that financial services is a highly regulated industry. So how do you kind of balance, sticking within the rules, being compliant, staying on the right side of like guidance and advice, while maintaining that kind of creative edge? How do you sort of walk that tightrope? Maybe coming to you first, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, look, I actually think the rules are a good thing. They help us all say the right things in a clear manner to customers. And, a lot of creativity happens with good constraints. And I think the rules that we have to follow, are great constraints. They're there to help us understand what our customers' needs are. They force us to understand our customers' needs, and then communicate in a way that they understand and in a fair way. So I think they're actually a good thing, and I think they help us be creative. Certainly, we think a lot about the box that we have to fit our messaging in, and what that box looks like is very different to if we didn't have a box, and that forces us to be kind of really creative to meet those needs. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Louis, what's your take?
I think it comes back to this discussion about trust and the long-term thinking. So you can be creative and edgy and fun. And I think I see more and more brands trying different things in our space. But you shouldn't be lying or creating expectations of things that your customers can't achieve your products, or drive them to unhealthy financial behaviors, right? That's our responsibility. And it's also in our own interest to not do that, because in doing that, we damage trust. And so we damage the long-term growth of our business. So I think, those compliance rules, those limits that are imposed on ourselves, they're not just here to constrain us, but they're also here in our own interest to make sure we don't break the trust of our audience and our buyers, I would say.
We're almost out of time, but I would like to do a quick fire round at the end. So just to end the show, you're not allowed to nominate yourselves. Sorry. What are some standout campaigns that you want to shout out in this space that you've really, seen, appreciated, enjoyed? Bryan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. I don't have a specific campaign, but I have become to love everything Wealthfront does. I am a user, longtime user, but over time I've used more and more of their products, and I find myself going to their content to just learn about stuff. So I think they do an excellent job of that financial literacy and providing great content, and their voice and tone across everything I've ever seen from them is always spot on. So big fan of Wealthfront.
Awesome. That is great though, right? You kind of come for the brand and then stay for the education piece.
Absolutely.
That's that's the dream.
That's right. Exactly.
Jack?
No particular campaign, but approach. I'm going to give the folks over at Yonder a shout out. In fact, I do have a campaign from them. No one really understands what APR is, and they did a great WTF is APR video recently. I would check that out. I love the thing I think that Yonder is doing very well is that they are competing with Amex, who are kind of very like high status, and they've done it in a way, they've kind of built their brand in a way that is oppositional to Amex, but also feels high polish and different as well. So yeah, shout out to the folks at Yonder for making some great marketing over the last year or so.
Absolutely. And Louis?
For me, I'm a B2B product marketer, but for once I'm going to talk about a B2C brand. And to me, it's Nubank from Brazil. I think I watch their space a lot. I think from the get-go, even from 5 years ago, they've always been kind of getting out there and doing some very original stuff. They really approached it as advertising. They do it with an edge, they do it with a twist. I feel lately they've been going even bigger by bringing some stars into their videos. You've got Matt LeBlanc, you got Stanley from The Office, and they talk about a very serious thing, which is banking, but with an edge and with a twist of humor, and they're pushing the boundaries there. And I think I'm always watching this with great enjoyment, I would say.
Amazing. And it's obviously working, like Nubank are pushing the boundaries, in so many geographies, the sheer volume of their customers, it's everything they're doing just seems to be hitting all of the right notes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. That wraps up today's discussion. Where can people find out more about you and your roles? This is where you get to shout out yourselves. So, Bryan, where can we find out more about you and Orem?
Yeah, so you can find Orem at orem.io, and I am at Bryan McCarty, that's BryanMcCarty across LinkedIn and the other socials.
Perfect. Thank you. Jack?
Yep, you can find Plum by Googling Plum, go to withplum.com, and I am Jack Cully on LinkedIn and also Blue Sky.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Louis?
Yeah, so I'm the only Louis Debatte on LinkedIn, and I'm very active there. So you should always be able to find me. And to find Adyen, just ask any good ChatGPT or Google search who are the best payment companies out there.
Oh, I like it. Equally, I like that you've checked that you're the only Louis Debatte. So that's excellent. You can find me on LinkedIn, Laura Watkins, or otherwise 11fs.com, or of course, Fintech Insider. Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please follow our podcast and don't forget to leave us a review. It helps us to make it better and helps others find the show. And as always, if you want to join the conversation, find us on social media. Just search for 11FS or Fintech Insider on basically any social platform, or email the team podcasts@11fs.com. Thanks very much. Goodbye. Cybersecurity is the top concern for UK businesses, according to Vanta's recent State of Trust report. But whether you're a startup founder or an experienced security professional, Vanta is here to help. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance needs across over 35 frameworks, like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, centralize security workflows, complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk. Join over 9,000 global companies like Flow Health, Synthesia, and Alica Bank, who use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. For a limited time, get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/insider. That's VANTA.com/insider for $1,000 off.